This is the new Maserati Quattroporte, and while you may think at first it's just the latest super sedan from the Italian brand, the reality is it's much more than that. That's because this car represents the beginning of a new era for Maserati. Maserati is a linchpin in Fiat Chrysler Group's plans to rapidly grow its sales to become a serious rival to the might of the Volkswagen Group. Globally, Maserati has set a target of 50,000 sales by the end of 2015, up from just over 6,000 in 2012. In Australia, the brand sold just 134 cars in 2013, but by 2015 it wants to be selling 1,500 annually. How do they plan to do that? Simple. Cheaper cars and an SUV. The brand will add the Ghibli midsize sedan later on this year and the Levante SUV either late in 2015 or early in 2016. And they are aiming to lure more customers from the likes of Porsche, Mercedes, BMW and Audi into their first Maserati. But before those cars arrive, there's this, the new Quattroporte. And when I say new, I mean new. The Quattroporte is based on all new underpinnings. There's a brand new twin-turbo V6 under the bonnet, and it's driving through a new 8-speed automatic transmission. But despite all this newness, it's actually the cheapest Maserati on offer today. Of course, it's all relative, because the Quattroporte S, to give the V6 its proper name, still costs $240,000. But that is almost $80,000 cheaper than the V8-powered Quattroporte GTS, and just short of $20,000 cheaper than the entry-level Gran Turismo sports car. Importantly for Maserati, that price puts it in the same ballpark as the likes of the Audi A8, BMW 7 Series and Mercedes-Benz S-Class. It may be cheaper, but it certainly doesn't feel cheap. Mechanical changes aside, the only specification differences between the S and the V8 GTS are the designs of the seats, the type of wood used on the dash, and the size of the alloy wheels, although they're still a sizable 19 inches as standard. This new model though is a big step forward. It's much cleaner, far fewer buttons, and this big touchscreen to control all the infotainment. But if you look closely, you will notice some of these buttons and switches, and even the graphics on the infotainment system do come from Chrysler. Overall though, I've got to say, it does feel genuinely luxurious inside, particularly in the back. And the reason for that is the Chinese market. It's such an important market for prestige brands these days, and that is a chauffeur-driven market. They like to sit in the back. So they've stretched the Quattroporte to appeal to those buyers. But Australian owners will prefer the front seat, and with good reason. The Quattroporte may be a big car, but it is built by a sports car company. The Maserati are no strangers to the 6-cylinder engine. They've previously had cars like the Biturbo. But this new engine is built by sister brand Ferrari at its Maranello factory, and not surprisingly, given its heritage, it is a gem. It has fantastic low down pull-in power. Peak torque kicks in at less than 2,000 RPM and is flat pretty much across the whole rev range. It just has effortless pull-in power whenever you stand on the gas. And it also sounds fantastic. Again, Maserati and Ferrari together, what else do you expect? Now, an 8-speed automatic may not sound like a particularly sporty gearbox, but in this situation, it's actually perfect for the job. It gets the best use out of the flexibility that the engine has with all that torque, and around town, being a traditional auto, it's a smooth shifting unit. And then if you want to actually have a bit of involvement, you can flick it into manual mode and use these paddles behind the steering wheel. One criticism of the gearbox is the actual gear selector itself. It's really fussy to get between the gears. Maybe you'll get used to it over time, but it is a little bit frustrating. And being a Maserati, the steering is excellent. It's hydraulic instead of the modern electric steering, which gives you a really good feel, and it's nice and responsive, so you can really adjust the car when you tip it into a corner. The interesting thing with the Quattroporte though is the performance of the engine is a little bit misleading, because it feels like a smaller car until you get to a corner. The straight line performance, you think it's a medium-sized sedan. Tip it into a corner though, and all of a sudden the sheer size of the car becomes apparent because there's a lot of weight moving around in the bend. But the suspension is excellent, you've got big grippy tyres, and so it actually hangs on really well. It is actually a really fun car to drive. Maserati's success or failure in truth lies on the back of the Levante SUV, but the Quattroporte shows that the company is making the right moves. It's got a great engine, it looks sharp inside and out, and it drives like a proper sports sedan. If this car represents the start of a new era, then Maserati's future looks very bright indeed.